There was a time in my life, thought I had to do it all by myself. I didn't know the grace of God was sufficient, didn't know the love of God was at hand. Now I can say, if you are discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, you've got to let it go, let it all go. And this is what you have to say. Hey, CSL. Glad to be here for yet another recording in the building. It feels good to be here. We feel you, we feel you, we feel you here. We are your music team. We have Mr. Paul Roberts on the piano there. We have Mr. Doug Allwater on drums. Mr. Ben Turbot on bass. I am your music director, Lee Langston. We've got staff in the building. You will see them as they're making their way up. All the people that came and gave up their time to make sure that we're able to bring this service to you, and we are thankful for them. We're gonna go ahead and get into this. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for
Hello, my name is Diane Zook. I am a practitioner with this church. I'm very happy to be so, and I'm very proud to be able to present some of the truths about this church. The Center for Spiritual Living is a part of a global organization with over 500 centers worldwide. We are a spiritual community that honors all religions and all faiths because no person, group, or religion has exclusive rights to the truth. We know there is no wrong way to worship or recognize the divine, whether it's in a church, a synagogue, a temple, a mosque, an ashram, or immersed in nature. We respect and honor any way that recognizes and draws us closer to our Creator. So we celebrate the diversity in religious practices with our ceremony this morning, the Flames of Faith. The candle is lit for the Tao to honor the universal path of harmony, the middle way. The candle is lit for the shamanic traditions, honoring the belief and practices of all indigenous and tribal peoples. The candle is lit for Hinduism to honor the spiritual path of devotion and the variety of religious icons and deities. The candle is lit for Judaism to honor the path of sacred law. The candle is lit for Buddhism to honor the Four Noble Truths and the way of compassion. The candle is lit for Christianity to honor the Christ consciousness that lives in all of us. The candle is lit for Islam to honor the path of peaceful submission to the will of God. The candle is lit for the universal religion of Baha'i, to honor the path of unity. The candle is lit for our own faith, new thought, to honor the metaphysical path and the practice of universal spiritual principles. And the last candle is lit for peace and for the peaceful acceptance of all faiths and spiritual practices worldwide.
Take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release, and I know I breathe in, I breathe out. I take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release, and I know. Just surrender, let go. We release and we know. Taking my freedom, putting it off the shelf, putting it on my chain, wearing it round my neck. I'm taking my freedom, putting it in my car, wherever I choose to go. It will take me far. I'm living my life like it's golden, 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 golden. I'm taking my own freedom, putting it in my song. take it from me. I was born into it, it comes naturally. I'm strumming my own freedom, playing the God in me, representing God's glory. Hope God's proud of me. Yeah. Hope God's proud of me. I'm living my life like it's golden, 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 golden. Living my life like it's golden, 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 golden. Living my life like it's golden, 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 golden.
Good morning. We're so happy to have you joining us this morning at Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Melinda Little, and it's my honor to welcome you. As I've been thinking about this Thanksgiving week, I'm sure that everyone or a lot of you are like I am. I'm going to have a very different Thanksgiving this year than ever before. I'm actually going to have a drive-by Thanksgiving, where I'm going to go where I've been going for over 20 years, to friends and family. It always was a huge group of people, and all I'll be doing is at a certain time, I'll just be driving up my friend's driveway, and she will come out and hand me my Thanksgiving dinner that she insists on cooking, because she said she just couldn't possibly pass up that opportunity. She couldn't imagine not cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And then I'll take that home and just have that with my household. So, and thinking about Thanksgiving, I was really reminded about a quote that Oprah, one of her favorite quotes, and that is, "Where there's no struggle, there's no strength." And so, I think that we're all at a place in our at this point in time where, you know, we're really going to be able to use that quote and gain a lot of strength from any struggles that we are having, because we know we're going to be doing those struggles for the greater good, for our families, our community, and for each other. And so now I'd like to ask you to please join me in saying our mission statement. We are a diverse and inclusive spiritual community expressing God as love.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see you. So we're on Sunday before Thanksgiving, and as Melinda said, it's going to be a little bit different this year. So I want to welcome you today and welcome you to this pre-recording service. We have 10 lovely individuals, committed individuals to the Center for Spiritual Living, Kansas City, who for this past month have come together to do this pre-recording of the service. So those of you who are missing being inside this room, we want to bring this room to you each and every week as long as we can. My name is Reverend Mary Lowry. For those of you who may not have seen me before, this is, I think, the 5th time that I've spoken this year. And the last time I spoke, it was on Zoom, which we have been doing since mid-March when the COVID crisis first began. And I remember the first lesson that I gave on Zoom was in May, and I had talked about a movie that seemed pretty important to me at that time, It was a movie that I saw as a young child, and the movie was called The Day the Earth Stood Still. And that's because the reason it was so meaningful to me at that time was because it felt like, with everybody being shuttered inside, it felt a little bit like the earth was standing still. And here we are, like 8 months later, and it still feels like the earth hasn't moved much. And in fact, the crises have kind of ebbed and flowed along the way. But I can tell you that the day the earth stood still feels a little bit meaningful today, and that is because now I look a little bit more like Gork than I did in May when I was on Zoom with the shield and everything. I kind of don't like it. It makes me feel kind of robotic. So just bear with me today. If you want to go ahead and call me Gort, I'm happy to take on that mantle today. So today is the 4th week of this month, November series, and we're talking about being compassionate conduits this month. And the title for my lesson today is Concern for Everybody. Concern for Everybody. I know when I first saw that title of this lesson, I panicked a little bit because I feared inside, how in the world do I talk about concern for everybody? Is that like worried about everybody? Concerned about everybody, does that mean like everybody on the planet? Or does it mean just my spiritual community, my family? Or does it mean the whole world? And I've come to find out that it actually means the whole world. And I was kind of hoping a couple weeks ago that it meant maybe just being concerned about the 80 million people that I know that I was concerned about a couple weeks ago. But now I find out that I have to be also concerned about everybody else too, which is kind of a bummer, but I'll work my way through it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening now in terms of COVID and how that relates to really having concern about everyone. Today, things are relatively still kind of shut down, and we're going through a period of another statewide spike in the COVID virus cases. And some are calling it very dark times. We're into very dark times, the holiday times when the weather is colder outside and people move inside and they're in closer contact with each other. And I think Melinda might have mentioned it, that this year it's going to be a little bit different because families are even being encouraged not to meet indoors for the holidays, and particularly Thanksgiving, just to help try to avoid the spread of COVID. But even though it's very dark times, and this is a way that we can begin to really feel like we're in a place where we can be concerned about everybody, because isn't that the way that it feels? I mean, I see on the news healthcare workers that have been on this task of providing care, loving care for the families of, so far, 250,000 Americans that have lost their lives to this virus. People are struggling. Not only the 250,000 families and friends of those that have moved to the next realm of consciousness, the next greater expression of life. But small business owners are having to shutter their doors, sometimes forever. The economy feels scary. People are struggling. They can't pay their mortgages. They can't buy food. They're asked and forced to be in situations that they've never had to experience before. And I have a lot of concern about everyone. The book this month that we were asked to focus on when making up our lessons was called The 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. And so today I am going to be focusing on step 9, concern for everybody. And what that chapter talks about mostly is that we cannot simply confine compassion just to ourselves or to our family, our neighborhood community. We must reach out to the stranger, the foreigner, and even the wider global community. The Chinese philosopher Mozi insisted that the well-being of humanity was based on an acknowledgement of the essential unity and equality of the entire human family. Early in the stages of history, this chapter outlines the idea of tribalism, and I think we've all been kind of thinking about that word recently or over the last several years. In the early stages of human history, tribalism really enabled the human race to survive in harsh circumstances. But in recent years, since the beginning of time, we've watched what can be referred to as tribal chauvinism. And what that means is that tribal chauvinism has boldly emerged from the shadows, and it's become extremely dangerous and divisive. So tribal chauvinism just says that it regards its own group's way of life as supreme and inherently superior to that of all others. So right now, this book talks a little bit about how we've been engrossed in genocide and terrorism and world wars that have had their grip on the power in the world for so many centuries. So the purpose of tribes nowadays can't be to fight or oppress or to terrorize other groups. We have a responsibility now to cultivate a real concern for all of our neighbors in the global vision, in the global village. So I was thinking that when I was reading this book, it was written several years ago, but what I've learned is that this COVID experience that we're in right now is really calling us to notice that what's happening on our own shores. I heard it said the other day that America is like a global community of its own, for there's expressions of every part of the globe that lives right here in the United States. Every culture, every religion, every creed, every color. So we have an opportunity to cultivate and foster the whole global community just right here in the United States. Also, in my reading for this lesson, I came across a video of a person that I've grown to admire, a preacher that I've grown to admire over the last 4 years. And his name is Reverend Dr. William Barber. And maybe some of you have heard of him, but he was the head of the North Carolina NAACP, but he has since started a greater movement, and he calls that the Moral Movement, Moral Mondays Movement. And he's quite popular. In fact, he was on the cover of the Science of Mind magazine in January 2018 as our spiritual hero of the month. And I watched this video, and he had a sermon that I'd like to kind of reflect back to you, the parts of it that I remember coming Reverend Mary preacher style, but I'd like to talk about that a little bit because I really think he speaks to what is our inherent divinity. What is it that voice that calls us to have concern and love and to stand up for the whole global community, all of humanity? What is that voice inside of us, that piece of divinity that's seeking expression through us? He tells a story about Ezekiel and when Ezekiel was called. And it reminded me of my early childhood. When I was a little girl, I think I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, I used to play Mass with my brothers and sisters. I grew up Catholic, so we'd play Mass, and my brothers were altar boys, and the Mass was all in Latin, and I remember being and understanding Latin at age 5. So my parents knew this family who had a recording studio in their basement, and they piled all of the kids in the car, and we went to this neighbor's house, and we did a recording. And I remember one by one, they went down the line. I had 5 brothers and sisters, and I was number 4, but I was 5 years old, and when they put that mic in front of my face, I said, "I don't know what to say." And they made a little record of that recording, and my brothers and sisters all had each their own lines, but that was my line, "I don't know what to say." They made this red plastic 45 RPM record from this recording that they did of my family, us little kids. And we put it on our little stereo hi-fi, and we played it over and over and over and over again. And I listened intently. I decided to wait for my line, and every time, over and over and over, I kept hearing, "I don't know what to say." Then they decided that they'd speed up the record, and they'd speed it up, and when my part came, it's, "I don't know what to say." And then when they'd slow it down, I'd say, "I don't know what to say." So where am I going with this? That's exactly what happened when Isaiah was called by the voice of God, that it was time for him to rise up and to speak. And he said to God, "I don't know what to say." And God said, "I will put the words in your mouth." So oftentimes we hear that. We wonder if the voice that we hear is that my ego talking, or is that really the voice, that still small voice that I'm supposed to be paying attention to? So I think of that all the time, and it's never failed me. But Dr. William Barber talks about Ezekiel, and he had sort of the same experience. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase and read sections of the opening Bible verse that Dr. William Barber spoke when he started talking to this people in the group. It's Ezekiel chapter 2. He says, "I'm sending you to a rebellious nation. The people are obstinate and stubborn. Do not be afraid of what they say or be terrified by them. You must speak my words to them, whether they listen or fail to listen. But you will listen to what I say, and then they will know that a prophet was among them." So Ezekiel's primary audience when this mystical experience happened for him were all of his people, but they were exiled and they were snatched from their homeland. And so he was actually called to speak. Now see if you can identify it with these times. He was called to speak to the voice of oppression that was the dominant voice in the time. The people had been torn away from their homeland and held captive. And the idea of oppression throughout history has been that this oppression and captivity is designed for several objectives. The first one is the dissolution of one's own nationality, their own identity. The second is to weaken their skills and their natural ability so that they can avoid political uprising from these people and a backlash against their own oppression. The third one is that they want these slaves to be the ones that fought their wars for them. And the fourth and most disgusting of all was because it would benefit the local economy by pressing down others, or pushing down others, so that the small group of people could hold the power and the money. So with slavery and oppression, the voices of justice and righteousness were silenced. The oppression caused the people to forget that this voice that they could hear, it was drowned out. And they couldn't believe how their religion was being used to oppress them. They began to forget that voice that was being drowned out by the voice of oppression. And Ezekiel was the son of a priest, and he was now in this land. And God said, the time is over for you to speak above the voices of oppression that dominate the microphone. The time is over to wonder if God's justice is still alive in the midst of oppression. In the midst of the oppression, God initiated the conversation. And that's what I believe is happening for us now. In the midst of the COVID crisis, we're being called to look within, and we're being called to be in conversation. When the oppressive forces think they've won everything and they have all the economic power and all the resources, that voice inside of you says that justice still has something to say. So he calls on Ezekiel to be the moral dissenter. God says, I need a voice that will dissent against the popular propaganda. And he says, I know the odds are against you. I know you don't have any money. I know there are powerful forces that seem to have hemmed you in. But I need the voices that will dissent against the propaganda in the midst of the powers that be. So if we're willing to speak, if we're willing to speak that word that we're called to say out loud, that divine expression, then we have to be willing to do it when it's popular and when it's not. When it's politically acceptable and when it's not. So we have to be willing to be assigned to dangerous territories because we're the ones. We're the ones that the global community has been waiting for. And then, as Ezekiel did, we stand up. So then God takes Ezekiel to the valley, and he said, look out there, what do you see? And Ezekiel says, I see nothing but dry bones and dust. And God said, do those dry bones live? And Ezekiel said, I don't know. You tell me, do those dry bones live? And God says, you preach, you say the words that I put in your mouth to say, and watch those bones come alive. Concern about everyone. Do you think about those healthcare workers that day after day without any real support, struggling and holding all the grief of all those that they serve and all those that have been lost? Do you see some dry bones? What about the people who have lost their jobs, the small businesses that have had to shutter their doors and may not survive the COVID crisis? Do you see some dry bones? What about those children, those immigrant children that were yanked from their mother's arms and separated from their families, many of them never to see their families again? Do you see some dry bones? When have you ever been witness to a situation where you found that somebody is not being treated fairly, but yet you didn't speak because you're afraid of being rejected or not listened to? Listen to the words in your mind and in your heart, and know that they are from the divine. And that when you speak those words, those dry bones, those places, those people that you think are forgotten and that nothing will ever survive this, say the words and know that those dry bones will come alive. So I'd like to close with an affirmation about concern for everyone and standing up. I am standing, and I will stand up for love in this world, no matter who is listening, because I am listening. And so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you all have a very happy Thanksgiving, knowing that it's all unfolding naturally and beautifully, and that you are the face of God, and so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
I'd like to remind everyone here that we believe in the power of prayer, and there are ways for you to get that prayer support. You can go to our website, which is listed on the screen, and fill out a prayer request for one of our prayer partners to pray with you. You can also access our 24-hour prayer line, a prayer that changes every day. We want you to know that we are there to support you and to hold in consciousness your requests, your dreams, your cares, anything. We also would like to thank you so much for the way that you've shown up to support us. And there are many ways to do that. Again, on our website, you can go ahead to go to the website and cslkc.org/give. We have a Venmo account, Cash App, or PayPal. And any way that you're able to do that, we also, if you would like to mail a check, our address, 1014 West 39th Street, KCMO 64111. And however you give, we thank you so much for all the support that you have shown us and that you continue. Namaste.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
Okay, I just have one quick announcement before we close today. I want you to mark this on your calendar. Coming in December, right after the Sunday service, Zoom, from 11 to 11:30 a.m., we're going to have another private prayer room Zoom that's going to have 5 minutes personal affirmative prayer with a licensed prayer practitioner. So if you're on the Zoom for the Sunday service, then just log off, and there will be a separate Zoom for this private prayer room. We're trying this out for the month of December, and I hope that serves you in another particular way, that the practitioner corps can serve your needs. Okay, and so now, just to close, we'll say our closing affirmation. I am a perfect expression of God, entitled to a life of love and joy. Happy Thanksgiving.